Chapter 5. The Professor Luther Kane, Lilly's first husband. December 25th, 1900. Luther came to town to celebrate the holidays with me that night at our annual Christmas Eve ball at the college, and he proposed to me. Everyone cheered and was very happy for us at the ball. Luther decided that we needed to have a small, intimate wedding on New Year's Eve night so that I could return with him to Washington, D.C. as soon as possible. I knew that he already had a house near the college where he worked, and with his connections, I could get a job there teaching. Because of the short notice, Luther's family couldn't come. At least that's what he said. Therefore, Eli, my twin, and Aunt Cinnamon helped me scramble my wedding together in just a few days. I wanted a big, beautiful wedding like my sister Eli with flowers and cake and decoration and gifts, but that couldn't happen. So be it. If I could be with Luther, that's all that mattered. One day, while I was making my veil at Aunt Cinnamon's house and the alterations on Aunt Cinnamon's wedding dress that I asked to wear because Eli's wedding dress was too extravagant for my small wedding, they both expressed their true feelings about Professor Luther Kane. Eli and Aunt Cinnamon did not like Luther and did not hold their tongue. They thought that marrying Luther was a big mistake and that he didn't love me. They said that he treated me more like an ornament, an expensive piece of jewelry that he knew others in the world would admire. I told them how intelligent he was, how he was a professor at a prominent college and author of several books and important in society. They reminded me that I was also a professor at a prominent college and the author of even more books, and had changed the lives and views of so many women in the college, sacrificing, helping to pay for some of the women's tuition, and graceful enough to not even tell those women how their tuition got paid because I believed in them and supported education. I was a woman of honor, they said, that Luther did not deserve a woman like me because he wouldn't appreciate it. I explained to them that I was not a young woman anymore and I wanted to have a family. And regardless to what they thought, I loved him, and that was enough. Eli mentioned that she never thought that she would find true love again after Branson died, but how God blessed her with Christian. The perfect match for her life and her twin boys was a dream she never expected. Aunt Cinnamon also mentioned how she found unexpected love with her husband Jacob and how their love happened in a blink of an eye. And even after 7 years, they still look at each other like the first time when they met. I didn't want to hear that. I was determined to marry Luther Kane. They looked at me, they looked at each other very disappointed. But then they both kissed me on my forehead and told me no matter what, they would always be there for me. December 31st, 1900. Professor Luther Kane and I got married. Eli and Aunt Cinnamon stood by my side as my matrons of honor. Tasha, my old friend who got married and moved away 3 years prior, came to my wedding with her husband and pregnant with their first child. It was a small wedding, like Luther wanted, with only the only other guests being the Barons, which officiated, my nephews, and Eli and Aunt Cinnamon's husbands. I hugged everyone goodbye and asked my aunt to take care of my cedar chest, the only thing I didn't sell for this great move. We caught a train that very night after the wedding, and the next day we were in Washington, D.C. January 1st, 1901. I left everything that I knew in Atlanta, including my family, and now had to totally depend on this man. I was very nervous and excited to see how Luther lived and decorated my new house. I took all my savings with me, which was quite a bit. I wanted to have some monies of my own, but Luther insisted as man and wife that we should share everything, so everything went in his bank account. When I arrived at his house, it looked like an old empty house with only the necessities. I began to order material and buy furnishings for the house because I wanted it to look like a home. Luther did not contribute a thing towards the decorations or improvements of the house until he came home one day and notified me that he was running for political office. He mentioned that we would be entertaining guests and hosting parties, and that he had to set me up with a job for appearances at one of the local elementary schools. I was extremely disappointed. I wasn't used to teaching little children, and I hoped that Luther would bend some strings to get me a teaching job at the college that he worked for or another nearby institution, but he did not. I knew that it would be better than not teaching at all, so I thrust myself into teaching and Luther's political career. We were always entertaining, and I was the perfect hostess. I did fit well into his world, receiving compliments from politicians and preachers and professors and their wives. Yet there was one woman, Amy Dudley, a professor at his college, that seemed friendlier with my husband than most. She was a plain woman, dark brown skinned, very tall and stout, that taught mathematics at his college. Through whispers, I found out that Amy and my husband had been courting the last 5 years, and that they were sure that Luther and Amy would marry. No one even knew of my existence until the day I arrived. The guests always doted on how beautiful and intelligent I was, how they enjoyed my southern charms, and how Luther was such a lucky man. I could see the jealousy that shadowed on Amy's face every time she looked at me. She began following me around my own house like a cat spraying her territory. One day I turned around and asked her, "Is there something or someone in my house that you want?" I wanted her to know that I knew she was after my husband. I finally insisted to Luther that he no longer extend an invitation to Amy for any of our gatherings if he wanted me to continue with my charades for his political gain. I knew by then that Luther did not love me, but only used me as a pawn. And it was confirmed when I heard him talking to one of his colleagues. His colleague, another professor, apologized to Luther for not having a small formal wedding gift. The colleague said he, along with his other colleagues, did not know Luther and I were getting married. Luther confessed to him. He knew when he saw me I was a prize because he because you don't marry for love. You marry for social. I was prized because you don't marry for love. You marry for social prominence. When the other professor mentioned about Amy, her previous role in Luther's life, Luther referred to Amy as no more important than the good time girls that continue to entertain him on Saturday nights. Luther even laughed as he talked about the girl that he had last week. He said that she had breasts as big as full grown watermelons, something his wife should have, referring to me. Being a Southern girl, his colleague just looked at him in disgust, shook his head in disappointment, and then made an excuse to find his wife. I should have listened to my aunt and sister, because at the end of the election, when Luther lost, things made a turn for the worst.